What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. Mountain Tough Fitness app and company is the best thing that I've done for my physical and mental well-being in a long time. I've been using it for about a year, and I use it several times a week, and it's super simple. I mostly work out at my home gym. I have a gym membership too that I'll go to sometimes, but most days I don't have enough time, so I have 45 minutes in my home gym. I pull up the app. They have their minimal gear daily workouts for me. I need very few things. I knock that thing out. It kicks my butt, and I'm off to the races. It's awesome. But they also have programs for every different level of athlete, all the way to the most elite and the beginner. So you need to go check out Mountain Tough. That's MTN Tough. That's in your app store. Get the Mountain Tough app. Use my code DAVE20 for 20% off. This is a limited time offer. 20% off using code DAVE20. Go check it out now, guys. You won't regret it. Today on the show is actually somebody that I met at the Mountain Tough headquarters, Bert Sorin. I was at the Tough Fest, the first annual Tough Fest at the Mountain Tough headquarters last year in Bozeman, Montana, and I saw him speak. He is the president, and his dad founded Sorin Exercise Equipment, but he's also was a Division I athlete, super inspiring dude, hunter, really, really well-spoken, intelligent. I really enjoyed my conversation with him. I met him at Mountain Tough. I saw him speak, and I wanted to have him on the show. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Go check out Mountain Tough. Do it. You won't regret it. Before you even listen to the show, go on the App Store right now and get it. All right, enjoy my conversation with Bert Sorin. Dude, the last time I saw you was in Bozeman at Tough Fest.
Yeah, that was like what was that, in July probably? Kind of like when we're still all in our dream season, kind of getting ready for everything.
Yeah, I watched you speak. It was pretty impressive, man. Like, watched a lot of people speak, and sometimes you're really bored, but you had really good energy up there. I was like, damn, I'm like feeling super pumped right now. Like, I feel like I need to do more. That's how I walked away from that.
Well, good. Did you do more?
Yeah, I did. I'm constantly trying to, but you know how it is, dude. Like, no matter how much you do, you always feel like you can do more, right?
Yeah. But I go through the same thing.
But I guess that's the whole point in life, is like always trying to get better, but just knowing that you're never actually going to get there, quote unquote, because there doesn't actually exist.
That's a good way. Yeah, you never really make it, right? It's just you never really make it, and you never really fail until the game's over. And I guess that's when life's over. Then that's that. So that's always look at. There's not really failures as much delayed success. And maybe that's just more of a mindset thing. Binary wise, yes, there's failure and success, and you can't be afraid of using the term failure. But I don't know. I don't like framing it that way, because failure to me seems like there's like a finality to it, and so I'm okay with not winning yet. Like it's just keep pushing forward and eventually happen.
Dude, people like you, like I was reading a little bit about you this morning, because we don't actually know each other very well at all. I've only met you one time, right. And you've had an incredible life thus far. You're a young man. What are you, 40, 35?
47.
Woo! You're still young. I'm 43, so we're in our prime. But
I don't feel my prime.
Like,
I feel
Division
older
I.
at 47. I feel older at 47 than I did at 46. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. This year it started kind of like
yeah.
Maybe I'm spending too much time in the woods.
Are you still training hard at 47?
I guess that's all relative. Training as hard as I have, nowhere near. I mean, it's like I don't consider myself training almost at all compared to what I've done prior, but probably to the normal person, they would say I still train. I mean, I do something active just about every day. I still lift weights. And during the hunting season, it's probably 2 days a week. During off season, it's probably 4. I'm doing something active every day. Like, so yeah, am I working out? Yeah, but training in many ways has a higher connotation than I'm probably doing right now. So
at your peak when you were like in college, Division 1 hammer thrower, right? Is that how you say it? Hammer thrower?
Mm-hmm.
So like competing at the highest level, like what did your training regiment look like back then? Just I'm always curious. Division 1 athletes, I don't think people realize how hard it is to be a Division 1 athlete in any capacity. It's your whole life, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, you're supposed to go to school, which I did during that time as well. But it was so it was class from 8 a.m. until lunch. Then you usually have one other class, or I would usually go 8 a.m. and then at 11 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays I would train javelin, which was the throwing, but then all the med ball circuits and velocity based stuff from 11 to 12. Go to lunch, go to class again. Regular throwing practice 5 days a week, from 2 till 4, so that was 2 hours, and then it was weightlifting from 4 to 6, then training room from 6 to 7, 7 o'clock get to training hall, eat till 7:30 or 8, and then it was that was 5 days a week, and during off season it was 6 days a week. So yeah, it's you're looking at every day it was 5 hours plus of training, 6 days a week. So that's 30 hours a week right there. I mean, that's almost a full-time job. And then you have, if you're in season, you're usually missing class every Friday, some Thursdays, and you're competing all week, traveling and competing all weekend. And then we would usually, if we competed like a Friday or Saturday night, like a Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, we would go to the weight room wherever the university was where we were competing, and we would lift up until 11 p.m. that night after the track meet, so we could get an extra travel day on. If the Sunday we got a travel day in, so then we get an extra day of recovery, and then you're just bombed out on Sunday, and then you rinse, repeat, and start it over on Monday. So it's like that for 5 years, and then when I was going for the Olympics and all that, it was a similar thing.
How do you with very little recovery, how do your muscles ever actually find the benefit of all that work? Like I don't understand from a science perspective, because even in my 20s, if I lifted 4 days a week or 5 days a week pretty hard, sometimes it felt like I was overdoing it. But when you're an athlete at that level, even UFC guys these days or whoever that's doing this, how do you find time for your body to actually recover to see the benefits of the work?
Well, that's two things. First, I would say the least of which is the training room and things like that. And I'm not crapping on those guys, but you could only recover out of something as much as you can with ice and stem and crap like that. But they did a good job of putting us back together when we needed it. The biggest thing was calories, man. I ate a gazillion calories, and it didn't matter what it was. It was just a butt ton. I had age on my side, so I started that regimen at 17 years old in college. So from 17 to 22, you could get away with a lot from a volume perspective and still grow. So it was 6,000 plus calories a day. It was 5 years of eating every meal I could get, almost until I got sick, and then try to eat one more or something, and then go do whatever you got to do. And then the next meal you do the same thing again, because you have to take in the calories for recovery. If you're not either in school or training, sleep in every possible position and chance you can. If I had a class and maybe I would get out of a class, and instead of driving home back to our apartment or our house, and I knew I had 50 minutes to the next class, I would put some extra quarters in my parking spot. I'd recline my seat. I would take a nap in the middle of the day in my truck on the side of the road for 35 minutes, because that's 35 more minutes that I got. And so you have to find these opportunities. I've slept in the middle of the grass. I've slept in the middle of busy hallways in the student center. For me, if I wasn't training or in school, I was eating or sleeping. And that's, you have to pack that in, and you mix that with being 18 years old and your testosterone is super high level. But to answer your question, with all that, you're still overtrained. And so you just hope you stay in a constant state of being overtrained. And then when you get time for the conference championships or national championships, you start tapering off your volume, your intensity still stays high. And then you get this super compensation where you feel like, amazing because you've basically been overtrained for 30 weeks in a row. And then when you back off at all, you have this giant bump in performance. And that's what you try to ride that wave and hit it just right for the NCAAs or Olympic trials or whatever it may be. So you're really in a constant state of overtraining. Your body's just trying to get used to it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I always wonder about that because I'm a big fan of UFC, and I always see they do these 6-8 week camps prior to their fights, and I train jiu-jitsu on the side as a hobby. And if and I'm 43, mind you, so it's not exactly the same, obviously. But like, even if I just do 3 hard days a week with several rounds of sparring a class, right? I am junk. I am absolutely junk. And then add it on top of my weightlifting and, whatever hiking I'm doing. Like, I tried to do it this winter. And I tried to do a bunch more jiu-jitsu, a bunch more weights and all this stuff. And I found myself getting burnout and getting sick. And it was just awful. Now, I'm 43, different. But still, I'm always trying to find that balance of what is overtraining, what is the right amount, but to where you're not being lazy. You're pushing yourself, but not overdoing it.
And that's the art of it, right? There's the science and there's also the art. The art is like the soft skills. And that's... I can scientifically tell you based on your body, your age, your blah, 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 all the volumes that you should be able to hit and all, like what the perfect training system would be for you. But the reality of it is you have mental, emotional, you have all these other stressors, physical stressors, you have lack of sleep, you have relationship things, you have business, you have all these other things that aren't taken into account in that model. So, I have to be realistic, and I think that's where experience comes in, and kind of the art of training is I realized during deer season 2 days a week is about all I could sustain because I'm trying to hunt. I just got back from Missouri. I hunted 6.5 days, and even my full days, it was up at 4, hike, make all the food, blah, 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 hike in to your stand. Now you're sitting, but the bitch of sitting is you're sitting. Like, it's cold and you're sitting for 12 hours. Like, I'm sitting from 30 minutes before sunup till 30 minutes below, and your body gets stiff. You're eating crap food because you can't take a smorgasbord of good food with you, so you're eating best you can. So you're dehydrated, you're sitting, you're cold, like all the things. And when I would get back to camp that night, like the last thing I wanted to do was train. Like, is it even good for you to train at that point? But, so I have a month or two of that stuff going on. So I just realized it's a maintenance phase, if anything. Now when I go home, like I got home last night, I hit some recovery workouts, and I'll probably hit one relatively high intensity session this week. And all I'm trying to do is put the brakes on and not slide out of being in good shape. I know I'm not going to be my best right now. That was June, July. Like, that was where I ramped up, high capacity, high hypertrophy, high workload tolerance, high strength. And then it starts, my conditioning will start ramping up. My strength will drop a little bit going into elk season if I have more of that style hunting. And then when I shift to whitetail season, my work capacity isn't needed to be as high, but I'll try to stay in touch with strength, because strength is the hardest to keep, especially at 47 years old. So the high neuromuscular component of a high firing pattern, if I could keep a low volume and some relatively high intensity, I don't have to rebuild that whole piece of strength because I could get in shape in 5 weeks. The work capacity thing and cardio shape, that's a pretty easy one to do. That's just volume. But if you're squatting, I'm making up a number, say 400 pounds, and you don't squat for 2 months, it takes you a while to get back to 400 pounds. Like, try to keep in the ballpark of that. And you could do it with very small dosages of close to your maximum.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I got back I had 3 elk tags this year, Idaho, Montana, and Oregon. And when I got back and went to my first jiu-jitsu class, coming back, I did 4 or 5 rounds sparring. I think they were only 3-minute rounds, but usually by the end of that, I would be absolutely gassed.
Right.
And I was like still on top of my game. And my coach is like, dude, you're in good shape. And I'm like, dude, I've been hiking for 3 months. And
Yeah.
I've lost strength, like from a weightlifting perspective, but my cardio is off the chain because I've been rucking for 3 months, with
Yeah.
anywhere from 20 to 100 pounds on my back in high elevation. So I
Right.
was like, when I got back, I kind of had this realization of, okay, I want to tweak my regimen just a little bit to include more of that zone 2 cardio. I don't have a lot of, where I live in the Oregons in the valley, there's not a lot of mountains right here to do the hiking that I want to do. But I'm going to figure out ways to get in more of those long hikes, rucking, whatever, to keep my cardio up like it was. Because when I got back, I'm like, I want to feel like this. I don't want to gas out after a
Oh
round of
yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. You basically were blood doping.
So, yeah. Dude, I still do, actually. It's still, I'm 3 weeks ago is my last elk hunt. And even the other night, my class is still the same. I haven't lost it yet, but I'm scared I'm going to lose it because, elk season's further and further away.
Sure.
So you bring up a good point that I've also been doing a lot of thinking about is I feel like people use the winter time to get lazy, and they use the holidays as an excuse to eat whatever they want, drink whatever they want, everybody works out in the spring and they for their summer hot bod, bathing suits, whatever. But I think the hardest time to stay disciplined is like what you said. I don't want to, what'd you say? I want to put on the brakes.
Yeah, I'm just
Like,
trying to
how
not
do you
slide downhill
how do you
as
do
much
that?
as possible. It's all comes down to preparation, really. Like, you have to have food accessible that is good. I mean, that just like you're eating at home. Like, you'll eat crap if that's what you have in your house. And even like getting stuff ready for deer camp or whatever it may be, like, just don't buy the crap and make sure you have plenty of meat, plenty of, good vegetables, low glycemic stuff. It's just so very hard, especially in, nowhere Midwest with the local Hy-Vee is like a lot of high processed stuff. And it's difficult, but you got to be intentional about it. To kind of go to what you were saying, like one of my, kind of how my cycle goes throughout the year. I come off of deer season, which is kind of, I'd say early December, I'll be pretty much done with it. So I'm kind of in the last little couple innings right now. I'll immediately go into a week or two of work capacity, just getting kind of the work capacity back up into hypertrophy. The hypertrophy phases there's always parts and pieces of everything, but the hypertrophy is going to be the main focus to kind of rebuild the muscle mass that's going to carry me through. And with that, you'll build some work capacity. That'll be through about February or March. And then the strength work is going to come on because that's going to just now have a little bit of muscle mass. I can work the strength, and then it'll start midsummer is where I really start turning on the conditioning phase of it, because I want to build the mass back, kind of like a buck going into rut. Like you get dwindled down. I lost 5 pounds this week, and I know it's not a lot, but like I'm always 235 now. I'm 230, and that was just a week of not eating the high caloric, the high good food, not lifting weights, not getting a stimulus in that way. So you kind of rebuild after the rut, and then just work your system back in. But now, if I wasn't a whitetail hunter and I was only a mountain hunter, I would have some slightly different inputs. But you got to look at all training. I mean, you're training your body at all times, whether it's intentional or not. That's what you have to understand. If you're sitting down, you're training your body to be good at sitting down, and so there's always an adaptation happening. And if people maybe thought of it like that, because I think some people think like, I'm not training, so nothing is getting worse, I'm just not getting better. No, you're putting inputs in right now, and that's moving. You're either getting better or you're getting worse in all of those components at all times. They're always in flux. And so I think if people understand that, and what is your intent, my intent during whitetail season isn't a giant super high work capacity. I don't need it, but I'm going to work on like low back and core strength and health, because my psoas will tighten up so bad my back will hurt for 3 weeks after whitetail season because I'm sitting so much. And then when you do go and drag a buck up a hill, then you're in Screwsville because your core isn't put together correctly because you've been sitting for 2 weeks straight, and now all of a sudden you have a high maximal work capacity going on. So some ideas.
What's your thoughts on? I was sitting in a tree stand the other day, and I'm no tree stand guy, dude. I'm so impatient. But yesterday, I did basically an all day sit. I did hike out for lunch, and I had to take care of a couple of business things. And then I went back in. So it was like, it was a pretty good sit. I have done all
Yeah.
day sits before, but I was sitting there thinking, this is extremely mentally challenging, especially if you have no cell service.
Oh
Just
man.
sitting there in your own head for 10 hours, like that's way harder than lifting weights in my opinion. Like figuring out, I mean, especially if you're like dealing with hard things in your life, like having to, you have nowhere to go. You can't hide. It's kind of like laying in your tent at night by yourself.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on looking at tree stand hunting like that? It's like, what a great time to try to get your thoughts and your head together.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. I come up with a lot of I work through problems, and there's a lot of clarity that comes from tree stand hunting. Mountain hunting is a whole different thing. It's a go time, and sometimes you're on a long hike. It's one thing, but I'll take my phone with me, and if I have phone service, then of course you can kind of keep yourself busy at times. But my notes in my phone are huge. I have pages and pages of notes because reflection happens, and you're quiet for 12 hours. You're not talking to anyone, so you can let the noise die down, and things are so busy in my life with me, family, kids, business, blah blah. There's always inputs, and then when there's not inputs, you kind of like let that rewilding happen, and then you'll get in about the second day, the flow state will start, and that's a lot of times when I design the most recent pieces of equipment or different business strategies, or because you could kind of remove all the other variables. And yes, I'm hunting for whitetails, but my ears and eyes peripherally could do some work while I'm somewhere else in my mind solving problems. And so for me, that's a really, really, really medicinal time in my life that I don't get often. I get it for about a week a year. And so I really look forward to it. And there's times where you could take inventory on your family and how you're treating your friends and all those things and start making notes, mental notes, or like, hey, I should do better in this regard. Hey, this would be a really good way to connect with my kids when I come home. Where usually when the bullets are flying and it's happening too much fast at normal life speed, a lot of times you don't have time to unpack that. So for me, like, that's really, really.
The Altitude Show is brought to you by GoHunt.com. GoHunt is the hunting company. Anything that you need for hunting out west, you can find at GoHunt.com, whether that be their world-class gear shop. They have all the best brands vetted by their amazing hunters that work at GoHunt. Trust me, it's the best brands. I do almost all of my hunting shopping on GoHunt.com. But also just their research tools. Like the whole year, you should be doing research, whether that be studying their maps or reading articles from the likes of Brady Miller or Trail Kreitzer, or looking up your drawing odds in various states and when to put in. There's so much information, and it's a great resource. Go to gohunt.com, use my code altitude, and you'll get 20% off on just about everything I just mentioned. But you should become an insider. When you become an insider, you can get access to all of these things. So go to gohunt.com, use my code altitude for 20% off.
Needed. And some of my employees actually laugh. They're like, hey, you need to go deer hunting again and like come up with the next landmine or something, because like they know if I sit by myself for a while, I'll generally be able to like maybe come up with something. So
I love rewilding, what you just said. That's a cool.
yeah, that's a term
phrase.
that Mike Glover Mike Glover at Fieldcraft Survival used. He has a class called rewilding, and it was a really neat concept where you take people that are not used to being outside like that, and just kind of like you take away cell phones, you take away junk food, you take away all these things that they're used to clogging their minds with and their bodies with, and you put them out there, you get them hungry, you let them feel being hungry, let them feel being cold, tired, all those things without any other distractions, and you start becoming one with nature again and with yourself again. It's a very powerful thing. I know us hunters know that and we experience that, but a lot of people don't. I mean, I was sitting on a little what we call a funnel, which is basically the woods were pinched down where I had pretty much the only shots you had were 30 yards in each direction. So it was a cold morning with crunchy leaves, so you kind of could hear a deer coming. So at times I would just close my eyes and just try to like not even use my sense of sight and try to really, really, really hone in, like to use my other senses to the most. Like, go, can I tell which way the wind is blowing based on how it's blowing the hairs on my face? Can I hear everything that's going on? Can I depict is that a squirrel? Is that a bird? Is that a raccoon? Is that a deer? If it's a deer, how heavy of a deer does it sound like? Is it coming to me? Is it coming away from me? What do I smell? Do I smell animals? You could actually, I know you could smell elk and stuff like that, but most people don't think that you could smell a deer or smell something. You certainly can. Like, I shot a buck the other day, and I could smell the blood from the stand. I could just, if you just stopped, I'm like, wow, that smells like blood. And I was like, oh, I'm 30 yards away, and I'm upwind or downwind of it. Like, I could smell the blood. This is pretty wild. But had I not slowed down enough and actually started really using my senses, you get clogged, and I think that's a really, really like great reboot for the mind and for the just kind of a rewilding. And then you're able to just open your eyes slowly, and just then you take in another input, and now you're like supercharged because my ears are super tuned, my nose is tuned, even just the sixth sense feeling of what's happening. I really enjoy that part. It kind of smooths out all the rough edges for me.
Oh, I'm totally with you, man. I was talking about on the podcast a couple weeks ago how it's almost like a psychedelic drug, being totally alone in the woods or the mountains, where I guess rewilding, where you have no access to anything other than yourself and the basic needs that you have: food, shelter, water. And especially if it's a couple days or even longer, where you're only stuck with what's in your head and what's in the task in front of you. I've never done any of the psychedelic drugs, but I think that's the most psychedelic experience I've had, because it opens it, not only it cleans all the bullshit out, and it really opens your mind up on what actually is going on in your life and what matters, and it gives you ideas. And dude, think of all the problems you can solve out there, like you were saying, especially if you're a business owner, which I am as well. You have so many problems all the time, and trying to find time to solve them is almost impossible. It's like you can barely find 5 minutes to go take a pee, Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, what I've also learned is some of the problems that time allows you to solve them. Some of the problems the time allows you and teaches you that they don't necessarily need to be solved. And that's something that I think you could chase your tail and try to put out every little fire in your life or your business. And sometimes you could just be away from it for a while, and then you come back to it 3 days later, and you're like, it kind of worked itself out. It wasn't that big of a deal. If it's still hot on the radar 3 or 4 days later, it's a real problem. If it's just somebody bitching or somebody a little disgruntled or just some little piddly thing, but it's real easy to get if you're an alpha or kind of a control person, like, oh, I got to handle every little thing. Bro, you can't handle everything. It's not going to happen. You have to handle the big things that have to be handled. And the key to the whole thing is knowing what things just need to pass. It's like if you're shooting doves, you can't shoot at every dove. You have to shoot the ones you could hit. And some of them just need to fly, and that's okay. And sometimes that helps me just realizing that, because there's to be a tendency to shoot at every dove flying by, and you go, hold on a minute. Maybe that's okay that those passed. And then it has to stand the test of time. Is it someone that's super valuable in your life? Is it a situation? You have to prioritize it. And to be honest, most of the stuff that people get bent out of shape and emotional about, I was telling my son last night, he was frustrated about something and kind of emotional. I said, here's the neat part, buddy. I said, most things that I've ever gotten really emotional and frustrated about, a week later I couldn't tell you what it was about. So that's telling me it wasn't that important. And so this probably isn't that important right now. I'm listening to you, and I know we're going to talk through it, but in a week from now, you won't remember you were mad about this. And in a year from now, you won't even remember if I told you the story, what this was about. So if you take that into perspective, realize there's the micro level of that too that happens every day in our lives. If we chase everything down every rabbit hole, you never get anything done. You just have to be able to go, well, not worth my time, done. And just put it in the done pile, although it's not the done pile.
I've made a promise to myself this year, that because I tend to take things personally,
Sure.
and I've found that the things, exactly to your point, very frequently don't remember what was bothering me yesterday, and yesterday it seemed like the biggest problem in the world.
Right.
And I've kind of come down, at least for me, my personality. I'm not saying this is for everybody. My personality is most of the time that's because I took something personal that wasn't personal at all. And recently I've been like consciously being like, nope, don't take this personal. This guy's got his own issues. Yeah, he's bitching about this or that, but it has nothing to do with you. And tomorrow you'll forget about it. And 5 years from now, you won't remember who that is. And you start going through every problem like that. And yeah, like you said earlier, there are real problems that you do need to attend to.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I bet you I've spent, I don't know what the percentage is, a very high percentage of my time in my life worrying about problems that don't actually matter. And maybe that comes with age. You know, maybe these realizations come with age, but man, I wish I could have taken things less personal sooner, because it feels pretty good. You're like, nope, has nothing to do with me. The only people that actually matter are my wife, my kids, my close family, my friends. What that guy thinks of me, none of my business.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's very empowering when you can take that mindset. It's, I think, who was it? Bradley Cooper said, if you have something, what he said, if you have something negative or bad to say about me, call me and tell me. If you don't have my number, I don't know you and I don't care. So
that's so true.
It was just like, wow, what a brilliant way to put this, And so, like, I've tried to even use little terms in my head, like if something is offensive or whatever, or just go, that's interesting, like in my mind, because I'm taking in this information. It's interesting. Interesting doesn't mean I have to do shit about it. It just is interesting. It's noted. Okay. But man, I've punched a lot of holes in stuff and seen people do some really, really dumb things over stuff that I could not probably tell you what led to that at this point. So when you get a little older and you realize, like, oh, that behavior is usually predicated on something that doesn't matter. But when I have a sick family member, I never do anything stupid like that. I attend to the problem. So those are things that actually matter. So when I act like a total asshole and an idiot, it's always for stuff that doesn't matter. So if I could look at it and go, that's interesting, wonder what their perception is, or wonder what their perspective is. And the reality of it is at times where it just doesn't matter. Like, if you don't like me, then you take the thing, say something bad about me, whatever it is. Is there any truth to that? Whatever they said. Yes, no. This is a flow chart.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, and you have to look at it. And there might be hey, there's some truth to that. Well, then I have a choice. I could either apologize, I can duly note it and try to change my behavior later, or if it's no, I can decide, do I want to correct this person? Are they worth it in my life for me to call them and say, hey, man, or lady, I think you viewed this differently. I respect our relationship enough to set this straight. Or do you just go, that's interesting. I know I didn't do it that way. And so it's like fighting, I'm a relatively big guy, and people are like, dude, I want to have you beside me in a bar fight. I was like, you won't, because I'm not going to get into freaking bar fights. Like, that's just not a thing. Unless you're hurting me or my family, I don't care enough about getting in a fight with someone that I don't even know they existed 10 seconds ago. I'm not going to put myself, my business, my life, or even their life in danger over with someone that I don't know inhabits the earth 10 seconds prior to this. It's just not on my radar. But I've had to mature into that position, right? There's the ego that gets in the way. Like, I'll show him. It's like, what? What are you going to show him? Worst case scenario is I could win the fight and get sued. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, I trip on the way to the fight, I fall down, the guy leaves, and I look like an idiot. That would be the best thing that could happen. So at no point does any of it make sense, right? So it's like, okay, well then, that's interesting. Funny you should say that. You want a beer? I don't know. I mean, it's just dumb.
Right. My one of my dad's best friends and a mentor of mine, a great man, he always says he worked at a prison for a lot of years. And so he's dealing with a lot of hot personalities, obviously. He was on death row and everything. And he said something to me that I will never forget, and it's a good way to look at stuff like that too, is he always says it when there's things going, whatever. There's someone trying to pick a fight or saying something to you. It's like, you win.
Yeah.
Bye. I don't care. You win.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
my roommate
I'm not
in
going
college-
to remember you anyway. So
Yeah, my roommate in college used to do that all the time, and it was the ultimate. It was the ultimate Trump move in every argument. I would say, and we'd be arguing, and he would go, "You're right." And I'm like, "Yeah, but," he's like, "I know you're right." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't really think that. You're just being an asshole." He's like, "Yeah, you're right." And I'm like, "Ah, shit." And he's just like, I can't fight this. Like, you're just going to be agreeable, and thus you win every time. And he's like, "Hey, you're right." And I was
it's
like,
the
"Oh,
ultimate confidence move. It's like, whatever, dude. Sure, you win.
You're right, man. You're a genius." You're just like,
So, what's it like, dude? Like, so Sorin X family company. Was it your father that started the company?
It was, yeah. He started it in 1980.
What's it like running the family legacy, and what's that pressure like? Like, how do you feel? Like, I don't know. I just sometimes when I look at family-owned and run companies where it's like a couple generations in, I always wonder, is that something they still want to be doing, or was that just something you felt like you had an obligation to do?
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I always enjoy the work. I enjoy the work, I hate to say like I enjoy the design. I enjoy the sales. I enjoy the manufacturing. Like, that's all fun. The hard part is when just the other stuff that flares up, right? Like, that's the stressors. I don't like money. I like what money allows us to do, but I don't like money. It's just the going after, the having to get it. It's just, you're in business. You have to have it. I can't have employees if I don't make money. So it's like there's that stressor that's always there, but money is always what gives you the stress. The other part's easy. If I could just do it for free, that'd be great. If I could just somehow live and like never have to worry about the dollars and cents of it, that would be fantastic. But the reality of it, it's a business. So it's exciting. I love it at times. Of course, it's a lot at times. I mean, I clocked in 24 years ago full time, and I've been around it my whole life. So it's like there's no getting away from it. There's no escaping it. Like, I'm inextricably linked to it in some ways. I'm proud of that, but there's also at times that it would be nice to kind of, be able to be anonymous and play that's where I like deer season. I get to sit and be quiet for 12 hours and then all I am is I'm this being sitting in the woods trying to be part of the woods, and that's my priority, and that's cool. Now, do I dislike the business Sorin X? No, but it's nice to get a break. It's kind of like with kids running, yelling, and screaming. You still want to be their dad, but at times you want them to go to bed so you could sit outside and be quiet. So
every once in a while you need a babysitter to go on a date night. That's absolutely necessary.
Or you wake up a little extra early and everyone's asleep, and you go, the house is quiet. This is nice.
Yeah,
this is nice. Now, do I want everyone to leave and never come back? No, but this is nice for right now. So, I don't know. It's great. Right. I mean, I love it. It's weird because we weren't always a larger business. So it is a family-owned business that's inextricably linked to my dad and I. So it's weird at times. I mean, it's never not connected, or you're never not on. Like the hours I work, I don't know if am I awake. That's when I work. But you kind of got to, like I say, I don't have a job. I get paid every once in a while for my life, and so if you could view it as that, and then just go, okay, then I'm going to try to make a body of work in my life that is tied, and business is part of it, that is valuable to the world. And if that can be the case, then I'm good with it. And if everyone doesn't get it, that's fine. As long as I know I didn't intentionally hurt anyone, and I believed in what I was doing, then let's roll. Let's do it. So it's different,
Yeah, but all of that comes with also running a business is managing people and money. And I think a lot of people look at like what you do or any other founder or, as more glamorous and sexy than it really is? I mean, how big is your how big is your team?
We run between 150 and 200 people.
Dude, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of families.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of families, and not only that, like that's you have that, especially just knowing you the short time that I have. I mean, you obviously take responsibility and you're a disciplined dude. You have that stress on your shoulders, but you also have to manage 200 people's emotions, you know. And when there's a problem, it comes straight up to the top. So how do you deal with specifically? How do you deal with that from a leadership
you have
perspective?
to train your managers and hold them accountable to hopefully buffer a lot of that. And it's not that you're trying to get out of it, but like if I had every problem hit my desk that happens in a day, or every issue or every emotion, then I would never ever get anything done, ever. So you have to have people below you that have the ammunition and have the sign off to handle problems, and they have to be good problem solvers. So only when it's unable to be solved and the buck has to stop here do I even want to hear about it. But I have to trust my people enough to realize that I won't hear everything, nor if I am hearing everything, the system is broken. So that was a hard one when you're only a 2 or 3 man operation to go to, in charge of 200 people, to realize that I probably won't always get the true story, and I won't know everything. Just have to be okay with it. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. You have to know
people. So you
to listen to those specific people, and then you take all that information in, but also even with the people you trust the most, they all have a perspective and a perception themselves. So you have to winnow through that, because everyone has their spin on the ball. People say, well, I don't have any agenda. Bullcrap. Everyone has an agenda. I have an agenda. Everyone has it. I mean, no one shows up to work for free. Everyone has an idea of where they want to be. So everyone has an agenda, and it's okay. It's okay. Just understanding what everyone's agenda is, and then when they come to you with information, knowing what does that mean after you pull all these stories together and go, my best guess is this is probably what's occurring. Do I have the capacity to change that for the better? Then you get to work. But if it's every time that something little blows up, it's like I don't need to know that.
Were you always a sort of? Did you always have like ingrained in you the vision that it takes to grow a company like this? Like you talked a lot about earlier, having product ideas and stuff. I'm no exercise equipment product expert by any means. I mean, I have, but how many different, how much further do we have to go in this field? Like, how many ideas are there still just ideas flowing out of your head that are badass? Like how, and then second part of that question is has that always come natural to you? Because product people, good product idea and visionary people, they're not around every corner. Everybody thinks they are, but when it comes down to you asking them specifically what they would do different or what they would make, they can, generally speaking, not answer. They just say, well, I don't know, but this one sucks.
Yeah, well, that's what we kind of even talk about here. My COO is famous for saying it. He's like, if you're going to complain about something, bring me 2 potential solutions to the problem, and one of them has to be free. So it's a really interesting way it keeps people from bitching. And it's a great way to look at it. Like, if you're going to bitch, then come with 2 solutions, and one of them has to be no cost. It might be a shitty solution, but it shows that you've at least thought about it, versus going, well, I don't like this, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, great. Everyone could say it's hot outside. Show me a way that cannot be hot outside, that you could, come on. I think my dad was always, I got it from him, he was always an inventor. I think even back when I was a kid, I had a gift for it, but then also being around him, I was industrious in a way that I could generally see things for not what they are, but what they can be. And so I was tweaking my hunting gear at 9 and 10 years old. I was sewing things, I was making things. I remember 10 years old, I was stripping juniper bushes and putting in my mom's food processor, grinding them up, and then putting them in pantyhose things and throwing them in all my hunting stuff to do cover scents. I was doing that at 10 years old, and now they have products that do stuff like that. That was in the 80s. And I just figured, like, oh, these smell a lot. Oh, they'll smell more if I grind them up. And then I could put them in my scent-proof bag. And, but that's kind of what I've always just done. I'm an only child, so you just learn to entertain yourself, but you always learn to make your situation better. Like, it's kind of like the sniper mentality. They talk about, like, the longer you're there, the deeper you dig in your hide. Like, always make even your shooting positions. Like, if I see a deer and I'm walking and that's my only thing, I'll shoot it from standing. If I have 1 second in a tree, I'm leaning against a tree. I'm making my shot better. If I have 2 seconds in a tree, I'm going to a knee and using the tree. Like, the idea is to always improve your shooting position. And I think that's just a great moniker in life, is always improve your resources and utilize your resources the best and create better situations. Like, the embrace the suck mentality is good, but unfortunately it doesn't create innovation, because if you embrace the suck too much, you're like, I don't know, man, it just sucks. Okay, then it'll just continue to suck. It won't ever get any better if you're cool with it sucking all the time. Now, at times, you have to just be tough enough. Like, that's where competition comes in. In competition, embrace the suck. Deal with whatever is fed to you. But in training and preparation, the key to winning later is to reduce as much suck as possible so you could still be tough when it comes into doing it. And so it's an interesting way to look at it. So you stack the deck, and so, like, you know, kind of how I've looked at the weightlifting world is I have a gift to see kind of the white spaces and where it could be better. And my dad's done that forever and was an innovator in that world. And I think I've kind of helped keep that going. But that's just kind of like, it's like the always running movie in the back of my head. Like, I walked through the shop 30 minutes ago, and I was like, walked by a piece of steel that was bent a certain way. And it was like, I just stopped, and one of my employees walked up and he's like, you okay? What's wrong? And I was like, nothing's wrong. I just like how that piece of steel is bent. And I like it that it's that length, and I know what it's for currently, but I'm thinking of 20 other things we could use it for that is a design I've been thinking of using, and I could prototype it off of that right now. And maybe it's what I want to solve this problem with this thing that I've been thinking of for 2 or 3 years. That maybe I haven't done an action step. It's just been kind of bubbling back there that, like, oh, that would be cool if that would happen. And for me, that's like what I enjoy the most. I guess it's kind of like an artist getting to paint a picture that's been in his head, or a musician, a song that's been in their head or their heart or whatever. I generally see things that when I walk by them, or see things that I want to solve, and then it's just almost how high on the priority, what does my time look like, what are the resources that I have, or what is the perceived need for that to actually happen. There might be designs I've been thinking of for 5 or 6 years that just haven't been high enough on the ticker to think that they would have value. But then maybe I'll talk to one coach, we'll go out to lunch, and he'll mention something that he's been trying to accomplish. I'm like, that's where that solution would pay off. And then I'll run back to the shop and go into a flow state and start designing stuff and stuff like that. So I know that's a very long-winded answer, but for me, that's when I'm at my best and I'm enjoying it. I took pages and pages and pages of notes on a new product and a whole new line of equipment that we're coming out with, sitting in a deer stand last Friday morning or Thursday morning. And it was just like so fun and cathartic. It's almost like, it's like painting a picture, and you're like, hold on, I want it, and you just go, and you're in it, and you're going, you're in it, you're going in it, and you get done, you're like, that's awesome. I get to enjoy it now. So like when that finally birthing of that happens, and then I just save it in my phone, 5 days later I'll look at it, and I'm like, I'm looking at my notes, I'm like, what was I thinking? And it's kind of nice because you're like, oh, I would have never remembered that part. I would have never thought that was a cool way to do that. But then I could just convert it to an email, shoot it to me and my designers, and then they're like, all right, what did you mean when you said vertical bolts in this situation with a drain hole? I'm like, well, blah, 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 and they're like, oh, cool. So I don't know. That I think that's one of my gifts, and I try to put myself in a position to utilize that.
You're lucky, man, because I think some people inherit businesses and their father or their grandfather was super can get into that flow state, that creative state. They're builders, they're problem solvers, but maybe not everybody's born with that, man. It's just like any other art. Not everybody's born a painter or a musician or whatever. Creating product, and I'm not a product guy either. I've worked with some amazing ones, especially at Sitka Gear. But like to get into that state is a special thing. So you're very lucky now. But how do you get yourself out of all the other things that need to get done within the business? Do you focus primarily on product? Like, is that your primary role as the president, is to focus on the future of the product?
First of all, to speak about Sitka, like that's where like I love John Barklow. Like that guy is legitimately really, really, really freaking smart. And you know, I have everybody's gear. I run. I mean, the other day I think I had on like a Beyond base layer, Sitka pants, Origin jacket, Eberly stock over jacket. Like, I love all those guys. All of them make great stuff. But like the what was it? The Sitka. I mean, like some of the Sitka stuff are just so well thought out. That's why part of why I like really cool gear is because I like looking at it. It just massages my brain to see something that's like really, really well thought out. And so it always inspires me to like, oh, I like how he used a magnet here or a buckle design for really super quiet, or this has this mask situation. Like, oh, why would they do that? What is the advantage of having it? How could it be better? How could it have cost less? Or how could you use better materials? Like, that's the stuff that like, that's why I'm a gear guy, because I love, like, that's my love language, is getting to do that. So shout out to Barklow, because he's, in my opinion, one of the geniuses in that world. But I'm sorry, your other question was, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, it was more just a comment. By the way, I love Barklow too. Shout out to Barklow. Yeah. I was his partner in crime for several years at Sitka. So we developed Subalpine together and a bunch of other stuff.
Geez.
So
I probably love a lot of your designs too. I just know John.
I was on the marketing. I was on the marketing side. John was. I just came to him with crazy marketing ideas. He was the product genius. Well, although we did collaborate a lot on the pattern.
You did a heck of a job, because that brand was marketed extremely, extremely well. And like I said, it's some great stuff. Like, you know, I mean, I think I ran the Timberline pants, the Fanatic gear. I mean, those are like go-tos, hard to beat, you know. But anyway, no,
it's so funny, dude. Like, I was there 11 years. I was the fourth employee, I think, and I go hunting now because I've given away a lot of my gear. I still use it, but I use a smorgasbord. I'm not loyal to really any brand. I just use whatever feels good, whatever I like. But I'm like, dude, how did I not come away with more gear? Like, I feel like I'm giving it to my friends or whatever. Because now when I go to I was in the tree stand yesterday using like Generation 1 whitetail hunting bibs we made in the green Optifade that we only had for a few years before we came out with the Optifade Elevated and the Fanatic systems. I don't even have a Fanatic. Like, I'm using Generation 1 Stratus pants and like some of my Subalpine on the top. Like, I feel like I'm like, dude, you think for a guy that worked there forever I'd have better gear, but I just don't. So,
you would think.
Barklow, if you're listening, take pity on me.
Yeah, I actually kind of like mixing matching camos. Some people don't like. They're like, dude, you look, And I go, I don't know. I kind of look nerdy if I'm like all in one thing. So I had like, I had like Elevate 2 and then like Tiger Stripe top, and I don't know, like everything just works for what it works for, but the Fanatic was the Midwest game changer for me. But I love it was so well thought out. It's great. But like, that's the kind of stuff. Yes, I am very blessed to be gifted in the thing that I'm interested in, but I think it's a self-fertilizing situation. When you start getting good at it, you have a couple wins, and you're like, oh, I kind of understand this. I understand what works within the industry or what doesn't work, or what's maybe a bridge too far. And it's not saying that everyone's been a home run. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you make. They're like, it's really neat, but it costs 4 times more than it needs to, or whatever. It's, so niche that no one will buy it. We've had all that, but that's the good part of it. You do it for 20 years. You have a lot of, you win a whole lot or you lose a whole lot to win a little bit. And so you just start learning.
Yeah, what do you think the ratio is? I always found that interesting being behind the scenes at Sitka. And now I'm working with some other brands now, and when founders get frustrated that, not every product comes to fruition, I'm like, dude, at Sitka, I bet you we literally canceled more products than we launched. I would have to go back and do the math. But I know for a fact there was many, many, many multi-year, tens of thousands of dollars of R&D products that we simply did not bring to market. They were either a total failure, meaning they didn't work like we thought, or they were overpriced or whatever. They didn't have good margins, whatever the reason may or may not have been. I would think the ratio is pretty high on that stuff, especially with stuff that you're doing. You're always tinkering.
Yeah, there's two sides of that. Some of it, just organic thought drives it, and that's probably a 30 to 50% hits market eventually. That was a lot less back in the day, but I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't work, at least what works and what doesn't work for Sorin now. There are certain products that I came up with, I was like, it would work, it would sell, but that's not who we are as a brand. And then 5 years later, another brand comes out with it and they sell the crap out of them. I'm like, yeah, but it was shitty. It was a dumb way to do it.
Yeah.
And it was, people are like, dude, I remember y'all having one of those in the gym. I'm like, yeah, but it was crappy and it didn't match like what we're doing. But they're selling for $79 and they sell a gazillion of them. But the joint angles were wrong. The load parameters were wrong. Like on Instagram, it looks good, but it sucked. And I have to be okay with that.
That's what matters, dude. That's what matters. Yeah. Instagram, the look on Instagram.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many companies that pop off on just like dumbed down versions of what we've done. I'm like, yeah, of course we tried that. It sucked. It was a shitty way to do it. But I think that's where like Sitka or other brands like that have held their water and said, no, we're not going to put out an inferior product. And we've tried to do the same. And just like, no, we're not going to put out if the $500 version is what you actually should have, I'm not going to put out an $89 version to match a certain price point and make it sucky. And then the Georgia Bulldogs or the LA Lakers or something like that buys it because they believe in us, and then it sucks, and they're like, well, this sucks. I'm like, well, yeah, I know it sucked, but we had to hit an $89 price point. No, that ain't a conversation. So these days, I think we hit them a little bit cleaner. But there's also the most recent Back Attack we relaunched. we've had that product for 22 years. We relaunched it this year. It took 4 or 5 years to redesign. And it was our 8th or 9th iteration in the recent design. But you have to have the capital and you have to have the belief in, yes, this will be really, really good. And, you're tens of thousands of dollars every time you reiterate and it's like, is this thing worth keep doing this? So that those products are always like that 50-50. When a customer brings you something they want to solve a problem, we're much higher. We're 80 to 90% because we already know, you kind of already know the side of the equation. The customer, if you hit these points, the customer will purchase. And if they're a customer that's not a total psychopath, there's probably other customers like them. So if I know that, Florida State football hits me up and wants this thing, I know if I make it and make it great, probably Georgia, Nebraska, and TCU are going to buy them too. So that's where it's kind of a double-edged sword. Sometimes you're solving problems that people specifically ask for, and sometimes you're kind of solving, in some ways you're solving a problem. The hard one is solving a problem that people don't know exists. That's like when we come up with a landmine or a bulldog pad or a base camp rack or something like that. People didn't even know they needed them. But then after they use them, they're like, oh my gosh, this makes a lot of sense. So that's, in my opinion, the highest level of it. And those pieces are rare because you're kind of rewriting the industry a little bit with those. So
yeah, and they take more balls to introduce because no one's come up to you and said, hey, I need, but those problems that people like. Okay, that Fanatic, you mentioned the Fanatic. I remember when we first started talking about the Fanatic, and at the time, the whitetail world just wasn't up to snuff technology wise in the apparel side of things. You had the Mossy Oak and Realtree putting the patterns on, fairly average apparel, and people were fine with it. They're tough people. Yeah, and you froze your ass off, but people were used to it, and you were just tough for doing that, right? It's just that's just what Granddad did it. His granddad did it. This is what you do, and we're like, well, you don't have to suffer, dude. You could actually be quiet. You could solve all the same problems and be comfortable. Yes, it's like 5 times more expensive than what you're used to, but how much you look forward to those 5 days all year, and you're going to freeze your ass off the whole time? That doesn't seem like a great idea. And so in the Fanatic, I think what made that is Jonathan and the product team going above and beyond on the feature set, like really thinking through what people need. It took years to get the side zip thing and that all the different features. The fabrics took a long time to find something that's quiet but also windproof, because that's usually not possible. Like it was a tremendous amount of work, but when it hit. Like it really hit. There wasn't much pushback.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an expensive system, but like I've been to the point where I've almost bought a second system. Now I only wear it 3 to 5 days a year, period. That's the only time I ever really need it. Like every year, it goes literally. It's in my washing machine right now. When I get it home, I'll put it in the dryer and I'll stuff it in a dry bag, and it won't leave until next November. But it's worth that, and I like it so much that I was going to buy a second one just in case something happened to that one, because it's such a distinct piece of gear that is used for my favorite time of the year. It's just that thing, and I'm like anything that's good, I've always feared they're going to stop making it, and so it's like, all right, well, I'll get a double of it just so I have it. But yeah, that's a perfect example. It's the most useless ass thing on earth until you need it. Like, I don't need this jacket that's this big and puffy, and it's, it's a pain in the ass to carry, and it's super hot, and it's like, until you're sitting there for 12 hours not moving, and you feel like you're more comfortable than you're on your couch, and you close your eyes, and you listen to the wind blow, and you just have this great time, and you're like, I could sit here forever. And then you shoot a buck at 20 yards, and it's dead ass silent, and you're like, oh, all right, that's why I got this. This is great. So those are the products I love the artistic geniusness in. Like, that's what scratches my little brain. Or rifles that are ridiculously accurate and all the little idiosyncrasies to them. And they're like, oh, that's just awesome. Like, I love that stuff. So,
well, that's what makes a great product guy, man. So I have no doubt that you got some amazing ideas in your head and that you've already executed on.
It's fun, but I love celebrating people's good stuff people do. Like Josh Smith from Montana Knife Company sends me the R&D of every knife they come out. I've had them since day one. So like I was using the whitetail knife this week and the little belt knife looking one, the one that he and Aaron Snyder did, and just like getting to try all the little ones, and I would text him, I'm like, hey man, I like how the finger groove is on this one. This one's really good for gutting. This was really good for skinning. And like that's the stuff I really love, because when someone else is really dialed into that, it's like a lot of respect. I love that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a leadership perspective, you seem like, you seem like an alpha male leader. When I saw you speak, like a lot of the essence of the speech were, to me at least, were around leadership skills. I don't know if you consider it that or not, but that's the way it came off to me. Like, what are some, because most people aren't leaders. Most people spend their life following what other people do, right? Mm-hmm. And in order to have your job and your position, and even to do what you've done, whether that be as an athlete or as a professional, you have to have the courage to sort of follow your own path and say what's on your mind, but articulate it very well, by the way. But what advice do you have for people that have things they want to say, things that they want to do, or let's just say, for example, they want to be more disciplined with their physical their bodies, they want to work out more, or they want to start a business. what are some like tools from your tool chest that you could offer up other people that may help them take the leap? A lot of the messages I get from people are sort of that ethos. Like, hey, I have stuff I want to do too. Like, it looks like you just, it's not true, but you just have fun all day. You're just hunting and have podcasts and you have businesses, blah, blah, blah. It's like all glamorous. It's like, well, that's not true. But
Right.
I hear what you're saying. But what would you say to those people?
First of all, I would say yes, we all talk about we need more leaders, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I agree with that. You can't have as many leaders as followers. Like, it doesn't work, right? Like, there's not 15 football coaches and 20 football players. It doesn't work. There needs to be a small percentage of leaders, and the system works if there's a certain number of followers. Like, that's how the work gets done. That's how the system and the basis and everything. So I don't think followers are necessarily a bad thing. You just need better leaders. You need better leaders, but also followers have their job as well. I would say the most important person you have, arguably with the leader, is your first follower. That's the person that gives the leader a little bit of juice and a little bit of traction, a little bit of momentum that then goes in through his or her actions or words or maybe just essence. They recruit the other followers. So, like, I would say you're number two, and many times as a leader, your number two is like sometimes your most important asset, because they're the one that's going to go, hey guys, like, this dude really isn't crazy. Like, he has some pretty good ideas, and I'm all in. I'm following it. Let's do this. And then other people are like, well, okay, well, maybe I'll do that too. And that's okay. Like, we have events, and I tell everybody, I said, if you're in this room, you have a job. If you're on stage, you need to be giving it all to the audience. If you're in the audience, you need to be giving all. Your job is to support the person on the stage. Your job is to stay engaged and ask questions. And so the idea of there's no free lunch in the whole thing. Leaders or followers, everyone has a job, and they're all super, super vital. But I would say, going back to being a leader, you got to be okay with eating alone. And what I mean by that, I remember like going to lunch, a gazillion times in my life, or dinner or whatever, just going to a restaurant by myself and eating. Well, it's pretty easy when you're an only child because you're just used to it. But I remember my buddy going, you're going to go to like a restaurant like an Applebee's or something and just sit by yourself like a weird psychopath? And like, I didn't understand that wasn't a thing. Like, I would go to the mall in the food court and I'd eat by myself. People were like, that's just a red flag that you're a weirdo. I go, no, I'm not worried about anyone sitting at the table with me. I can be by myself all I want. I know if I need to have food, I need to do this and this within the time stamp that I have to move the ball down the field, and I need sustenance, and I don't care if you're going to go to a Chinese buffet. I'm going to go to this place so I could get better food because I care about my performance. I'm totally fine eating by myself. Nothing against anyone, but I didn't realize that was so rare for people in some ways. And I think you have to be, and that's just more of a figure of speech in some ways too. You have to be okay with going after what you're going after with no one listening or giving two shits about it for a while. Like, you have to be like, no, I believe in this. I'm going to stay the course. I believe in this. And I got to keep running the experiment. And eventually, if it actually has value, someone will go, hey man, that's pretty cool. There's your first follower. But you can't be like, come on guys, let's go do it. And then like, let's go out and eat. And then everyone's like, I don't really feel like. You're like, all right, cool, I'll stay with you guys. No. Those guys, those aren't the leaders. They're like, no, I'm going to go get a steak because I have to get my protein intake. And I don't care what you do. I'm okay with it. If you want to come with, that's great. But I'm going. And that was something when my roommates made 3 Olympic teams. I remember when we were in college, we were all got done with training and everything. We're hanging out playing video games and jacking around and being stupid. And I remember him like walking. We're all on the floor, and he walked over, all like stepped between all of us, walked past us, put 2 steaks on the grill, walked right past us again, didn't engage in anyone else, and went in there and ate 2 steaks. And we're like, Brad, why aren't you being social? And he's like, looks at us like, you children aren't working at the same level that I'm at. He's like, I don't care that you're playing video games. I'm going to go win the national championships. I'm going to take care of business. And at 18 years old, I saw that. I'm like, oh, he's different. He doesn't have to eat with us to be okay. He's going to do what he has to do to win. And I think when people can start realizing that, and they can be okay to eat by themselves and okay to go after their dreams by themselves, like that's actually when you start pulling ahead. But it's not comfortable. It's not something that most people want to do. So I think that's a big part of the puzzle. That's kind of how I see leadership. And what I tell like my guys and gals that work for me, I said, especially if they're like in a sales position or solutions oriented position, they have 4 things they need to do every time they interface with a customer or really anyone. Like if someone walks in our facility, 4 things need to happen. Number 1, they need to perpetuate and live the Sorin X brand and ethos. They all know what that is. We call it live the code. You just know what it is. You know, are you doing hard stuff? Are you doing it with a smile on your face? Are you getting out like you're living the code? Number 2, are you developing and perpetuating your personal brand? What do I think about you? If you left the room and I were like, someone was like, hey, you know Dave? I'm like, Dave. I don't remember. Well, then, in my opinion, you didn't perpetuate your personal brand enough where you're sticking in my mind as you are something. There's not a pin in my mind. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just speaking hypothetically. Number 3, learn something. Learn anything. If someone walks in the room, hey, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Doug. Well, now I know your name's Doug. Where are you from, Doug? I'm from Richmond, Virginia. Oh, from Richmond, Virginia. I learned something. And then last would be teach something. That's make sure that you bring some sort of value to everyone you meet. Even if that's giving them directions, telling them where the bathroom is, something, teaching them a squat technique, whatever. So in those 4 things, I think you inadvertently become a leader because you're adding value to the people around you. And if what you're putting out is holistically and globally valuable to your atmosphere, you rise as a leader, whether you meant to or not. And I've seen some people that were leaders that didn't want to be leaders. People just followed them because they just had that essence. And sometimes that's dangerous because they don't realize they're playing with a loaded gun because they could be total idiots and people are going to follow them just because they just got that juice. So I think you have to understand, you're like, hey, I'm one of those guys, or maybe I'm not one of those guys. Well, what's my role in this whole thing? So that's how I see it.
I think that's really interesting, what you said about followers important too. Absolutely agree with you. I'm not, and I talk a lot about leadership just because I personally struggle with that loneliness that comes with trying to, I own multiple businesses, and most of the time all the problems are all on my shoulders. Like I spend a lot of time alone because I'm self-employed. I work in my home office. So I personally am always trying to learn from other people about how to be a better leader, how to get used to that. I don't know. It's hard to describe it besides being lonely because it's not a lot of people want to do it, or they like some of my best friends are like plumbers, and they have what would be classified as a normal job, and they're great people and they love it, and that's awesome. It wasn't for me, and I chose this path. So I'm always just curious to learn from people like you because you seem like a mentally strong dude. You're leading a big company. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
Don't remind me. I appreciate it.
Dude, that was on a lighter note. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to tell you that was a dandy buck you got.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Some things work out. I appreciate you saying that. It's when you're doing all those things and trying to strive for something maybe different, that's where they talk about it's lonely at the top, and that doesn't mean like a demographic or whatever. It's just like when that level of responsibility is on your head. There's not a lot of people that you could confide in. There's not a lot of people that you could have these long, drawn out, really open conversations with because, especially if there's out of 200 people out there, there ain't a whole lot of them I'm going to be able to have the full conversation with. It's just not one of those things. Nothing against them, nothing against me. It's just kind of where you are. You don't have the full adult conversation with your kids at right. 8 or whatever. It's just not a thing. So, you have to be okay with that. And that's like I talk about the thin air. Like you have to be able to breathe the thin air. And there's very few people that can breathe it. And it's interesting the people who can. And you keep finding some of the same people on top of those mountains that are able to breathe the thin air and thrive in the thin air. The view's really cool, but it's not without its hazards in itself. And again, it doesn't demonize someone who doesn't choose that path. In some ways, it sounds awesome to not have the pressure at times, but I don't think I'm built for that. So.
Oh, dude, it sounds awesome all the time, but I'm also not wired for it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're not built for, not wired for. It's just like, okay, well, if you're this is who you are. I know how I could. I was sitting I was riding up the elevator to the Delta Lounge the other day, flying back from hunting, and there's a guy in a suit, and it was a nice suit, and he was a good enough looking dude, and then is put away in his suit and everything like that, and he was talking on his phone and everything. Seemed extremely successful, but I remember looking, I'm like, I would die. That would be a prison for me personally. Nothing against it, but for me, wearing even a really nice suit every day and burning it up through an airport and having to talk businessy stuff on a thing, that would be a fate worse than death for me. And for me, some people, like, that's their idea of success and they love it. Maybe wearing frickin', the khaki, a tan pair of pants and hiking boots and having dirt under your fingernails and whatever, that's not a sign of success to other people. They wouldn't want my life. That's fine. Like, no sweat. I just know what I like and what I don't. So.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. And I think that's a good way to cap this off. I have a hard stop.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to spend some more time in person. Hope maybe see you out in Bozeman for hopefully before the next Tough Fest. And where's your guys' headquarters at?
We're in South Carolina. We're in Lexington, South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Really
maybe someday
Superman.
I can make it out there. You guys do some cool stuff. That event you guys put on looks rad.
Yeah. We do some pretty neat stuff from time to time. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You gotta come out.
I know you guys have been awesome to Mountain Tough and Dustin and the team over there, and
Great guys.
I'm so glad that they introduced us.
Yeah, likewise, man. Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Cheers.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Supper. Even though I've been hunting for 40 years, I'm constantly failing and learning and failing and learning. And one of the things I do in the off season is I try to dig into as many resources as possible to become a better hunter. And one of those places is outdoorclass.com. On outdoorclass.com, you can learn from the likes of Randy Newberg, Remy Warren, and many, many other, Corey Jacobson, many other amazing talents in the industry. And they teach you about their specific skill sets. For example, Remy Warren has a class on mule deer hunting, or Randy has a class on antelope hunting. Corey, elk calling, elk strategy. There's even cooking classes. It's basically the master class for hunting, and it's an amazing resource. We can all get better no matter what stage of your hunting path you're on. So go to outdoorclass.com, use code altitude. That is the code altitude for 20% off your subscription, and do it right now. It helps the show and it will help you. Thank you.